everyone, welcome to our channel. My name is Angeline Bihino
and Shara Sota.
We are the student of Palawan State University Ross Campus from Bachelor of Secondary Education, major in Social Studies.
For today's video, we will discuss to you about the Greek culture. Here are the subtopics. First, art and literature flourish in Greece. Second, scientific thought and philosophy develop. And last, learning continues in the Hellenistic age.
The Greek placed a high value on individual excellence. Greek poets, playwrights, and historians wrote enduring masterpieces. The Greek really love art by making poems and playwrights. They really love art. There are lots of plays that been part of their rich art. They also contributed in the development of new methods and ways of thinking that are foundation of modern science and philosophy. Greeks don't settle with okay na kaya ito or pwede na siguro to, but instead, they always do their best. They are demanded to put intelligence, effort, and self-discipline to balance, and that is what they called moderation. They use poetry to express the view of life. They express how they struggle to level with the standards of courage and honor. They also wrote poems to honor their victory in athletic games, and also their heroes who killed in a battle. Pindar is one of the most famous writers during his time. He wrote Success for the striver washes away the effort of striving. Pindar wrote many choral works such as paean songs and hymns for religious festivals. Another outstanding early Greek poet was Sappho, who was born about 600 BC. Sappho probably wrote around 10,000 lines of poetry. She was known as a lyric poetry. This is the example of her lines. I have a child so fair, as golden flower is she. My clients all my care. I'd not give her way, for the kingdom of Lydia, nor lands men to see. Later on, was Sappho has been subject of furious controversies about her sexuality, so the church burned her. They want it to be vanished from the city. Poetry was an important part of religious festival. The poems were chanted during festivals. That is how they celebrated their festivals. Everyone has their part. Since they have a mild climate, they can watch play outside. Everyone can watch the play, even prisoner was given a chance to watch. For me, it is a good theater because it was made for all. It is not for only those who can afford tickets like rich or in the middle class. It is for everyone who wished to watch the play. They use drama to show to all the stories of God and heroes. This is their way to express people's problem in daily living. There are punishment for men and women who are stubborn or too proud. Maybe plays dealt with it to tell to everyone that being boastful was not a good thing. One of the most famous tragedian before was Aeschylus. He was described as a father of tragedy because he produced lots of plays that win Athenian vote during the 5th century. Sophocles was also known as a Greek playwright. He wrote about 123 plays, but only 7 complete plays. Euripides, also a tragedian of classical ancient Greek tragedies, for whom any plays have survived in full. His famous work was The Trojan Women. It tells about the tragedy they experienced during that period. In the Greek theater, artists are not allowed to show their faces. They let the audiences know whether the character was good or evil based on the mask that a character wearing. The problem was that Greek cultures put women in a position of being inferior to men, so women's role in society was very restricted. In many ways, women were not allowed to be on stage because it was considered dangerous. Men played male characters as well as female characters. They do both. Around 6th century, the Greek comedy began. One thing is certain, although one main purpose of Greek comedies was to entertain a mass audience, not only tragedy, drama, but also comedy to lighten the mood of audiences. One of the Greek comedy writer is Aristophanes, was known as the father of comedy because his comic plays introduced the genre during the period of ancient Greece.
What was comedy like when it was first born in ancient Greece? Back then, entertainment was taken seriously. Drama was a way of investigating the world and what it meant to be human. The city of Athens institutionalized theatrical culture by organizing a festival, the City Dionysia, to honor the god Dionysus. In classical Athens, extraordinary ideas were brought to light by philosophers, artists, and statesmen, leaving an indelible mark. Yet Athens was also a great military power involved in two wars, against the Persians and against Sparta during the Peloponnesian War. Playwrights explored these turbulent times, and among them stands out Aristophanes, known for lampooning contemporary Athenians while addressing the most critical issues of his day. The Birds is a story about fleeing from a life of disillusionment and starting afresh. Two men are led to an avian realm where they had to plan to create a new community, Cloud Cuckoo Land. Soon laws are implemented, access to the sky is controlled, and the gods are cut off from their earthly devotees. What initially seems to be a utopia swiftly changes as politics come into play. Still, Aristophanes turns our heads upward to the sky, leaving questions about human nature open-ended, hovering over us, like Cloud Cuckoo Land. Taking flight centuries later, Nikos Karathanos saw a spark, not in the flight towards power, but in fleeing it. In that moment, when a man wants to try out his wings in search of a place where everyone can coexist. In a utopia free from decay, always shining.
The second subtopic that we have for the Greek culture is scientific thought and philosophy developed. In Greek culture, the Mesopotamians and Egyptians took the first step toward the creation of science, and it was applied in their daily living. As you can see in the picture, they discover how to make a balancer that can help them to fetch water easily. They were not true scientific thinkers, however, because they assumed that the actions of gods and demons caused all the natural events. Greek thinkers are curious about the natural world. Our world philosophy comes from a Greek word meaning love of wisdom. For the ancient Greeks, the love of wisdom means a search of knowledge about the universe and human beings' place in it. Philosophers tried to understand events and finding out what caused them. They did not accept explanations that said the gods were responsible for whatever happened. The philosophers tried to analyze nature in an orderly way. They believe that nature follows general rules called natural laws, and they set out to find those laws. They felt this could be done by using their ability to reason. Here are the earliest scientists and philosophers of ancient Greek. First is Thales, who came from one of the Greek city-states in Asia Minor. He was born about 640 BC. Thales also looked for a natural cause of earthquakes, which meets blame on the actions of Poseidon. Poseidon is the god of the sea. Thales was widely respected in his name, and other natural philosophers followed his way of thinking and reasoning. Second was Pythagoras. He lived in the 6th century before BC. Pythagoras studied music, astronomy, and mathematics to find these laws of principles. Students today still learn Pythagoras' theorem about the relationship between the sides of the Earth triangle. Third was Democritus. In the late 5th century before BC, Democritus thought that nature was made up of tiny atoms particles that could be divided. Although modern science has found even smaller particles, Democritus' idea was the first anatomic theory. He was the first anatomic theory finder. And last, Hippocrates. He taught physicians to find the causes of disease by using their reason, not by blaming illness on the anger or ill will of the gods. The doctors trained by Hippocrates took notes on appearance and behavior of their patients and carefully recorded the medicines and methods they used in treating sick people. Now, the Greeks influences modern scientific study. The modern scientific approach had its beginning in thinking of the Greek philosophers and scientists. This way of thinking is based on observing nature, making logical deductions, and looking for proof and evidence. Sophists also consider problems of society. The earliest Greek philosophers used reason in studying nature and the physical world. In the decades after the Persian War, teachers known as sophists traveled from the city to city teaching speech, grammar, poetry, gymnastics, mathematics, and music. The sophists were interested not in nature but in issues in citizenship, politics, and law. The sophists claimed they could teach people how to make good laws, speak well, and win debates in assembly. In Athens, the sophists angered many citizens by arguing the gods did not exist, that the gods did not exist. Now, let me introduce to you on the 3 greatest ancient Greek philosophers. First is Socrates. Another criticism of the sophists was made by Socrates, who is considered one of the most extraordinary thinkers in history. Socrates worked as a stonecutter but became famous for his thoughtful conversation with other men of Athens. He agreed with the sophists that it was more important to gain knowledge was occurred through reason and that the individual could be improved through education. Socrates emphasized careful thinking and questioning. According to Socrates, an individual should rely on reason, not emotion. To govern his or her behavior, Socrates wanted his fellow Athenians to think critically about how they live their lives. The questions and answers approach taught them to reject views that they could not logically defend. To Socrates, such as discussion between people who are genuinely researching for understanding was the key to knowledge of life. Socrates is executed for his view because many leading Athenians disapproved of Socrates' teaching. He was officially accused of corrupting Athenian youth and of understanding belief in the cities of God. Next is Plato. Plato questions ideas about government and democracy. Plato stressed the importance of knowledge and character, while Socrates was the most concerned about the individual. Plato felt that society as a whole should be regulated by reason. The years during the Peloponnesian War were difficult for Greece. Plato was critical of the leaders of Athens in this period, particularly after the trial and deaths of Socrates. Plato blamed the democracy for the troubles of Athens. He expresses his ideas in the Republic, a description of an ideal store. According to Plato, these philosophers' kings would not be interested in the money or power. Rather, they would spend many years to get education and experience needed to become wise and just rules. Last is Aristotle. Aristotle studies all fields of knowledge. Probably the most brilliant student at Plato's Academy was Aristotle. He explored every field of knowledge known to ancient Greeks. Aristotle tried to discover and organize the basic ideas in many other fields of knowledge. In his Poetics, he examined what made plays good or bad. In his Politics, Aristotle looked at the different forms of government in terms of how they were run and what benefits and responsibilities their citizens had. In addition to that, this video will make you understand more about our philosophers and scientists.
What is justice? What is the difference between right and wrong? What should we teach the young? These are hard questions, but they are questions the ancient Greeks thought all wise men should try to answer. The Greeks even invented a word that means lover of wisdom, philosophos, or philosopher. The pursuit of wisdom, sometimes called philosophy, is one of the lasting achievements of ancient Greek civilization.
Virtue?
One of the most important Greek philosophers was a man who said, "The unexamined life is not worth living." His name was Socrates, and you could find him arguing with people on the sidewalks of Athens during the 5th century BC.
Ever since this skunk set up shop here, he's made me work twice as hard.
So you say Simmias here is your enemy because he makes you work harder than you did before?
Wasn't that enough to make any man your enemy?
Well, an enemy is a man who does you evil, isn't he?
Any fool knows that.
And a friend is one who does you good.
Any fool knows that too.
But what a fool does not know is what is good and what is evil. Now you make better races and you work harder because of Simmias competition. Do you not, Protagoras?
This question and answer method of teaching is still known today as the Socratic method.
To talk to Socrates was to be taken down the garden path, at the end of which one finds that, alas, you don't know what you're talking about. So it's fun to read the works. You sympathize with the person Socrates is questioning. And you have a sense that this poor person is being had, but you don't know exactly how it's being done. Socrates is the master of this.
Socrates made a lot of enemies because he questioned many of the ideas people believed in. The leaders of Athens soon grew tired of being tripped up by Socrates' sharp tongue. In 399 BC, the 69-year-old philosopher was brought to trial for corrupting the young. Socrates was offered his freedom if he would just stop questioning people. He refused. He was condemned to die by drinking poison made from the hemlock plant. But the teachings of Socrates would live on thanks to his most famous student, Plato. Plato made Socrates the main character in more than 20 of his books, including The Republic, a series of imaginary conversations between Socrates and others. Plato was born during the Golden Age of Athens, around 428 BC. The newly completed Parthenon towered over the city, one of the crowning achievements of the world's first democracy. The first plays were performed, and the first great histories written. But it was also a time of devastating human loss. For the first 23 years of Plato's life, the Peloponnesian War raged between Athens and its neighbor Sparta. Plato thought there must be a better way to live. In his book, The Republic, Plato describes a utopia, an imaginary perfect world in which everybody gets one job for life and is assigned a social rank. There is no war because philosophers, of course, are kings. To ensure that this perfect world remains perfect, children are only allowed to hear heroic and uplifting tales. The famous national epics of Homer, the Iliad and the Odyssey, are out because the gods behave badly and the heroes are flawed. How would you feel if your favorite movies and TV shows were banned because they were considered bad for you? Plato was serious about spreading his ideas. He even started a school called the Academy. The Academy's most famous student was a kid named Aristotle, who went on to tutor Alexander the Great. The writings of the Greek philosophers might have been lost forever after the Roman Empire collapsed, except for the work of Islamic scholars. They translated Plato into Arabic and passed his books through Egypt, India, Persia, and Spain. It wasn't until centuries later that the ancient texts finally reappeared in Europe. Philosophy, wrote Aristotle, begins in wonder. We still wonder about the same questions that Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle asked all those centuries ago. The quest for wisdom and justice is as important today as it was in ancient Greece.
Our last and third subtopic is learning continues in Hellenistic age. Alexander conquest inspires new learning. Many scientists and philosophers had accompanied Alexander's expeditions to the Near East. Their travels gave them a vast amount of knowledge about the new knowledge about plants, animals, geography, and astronomy. The Greeks also acquired his skills, ideas from the different peoples of the empire. Mathematics and astronomy from the Near East, medical knowledge from Egypt. Alexandria is the center of Hellenistic culture. The city of Alexandria in Egypt have been founded by Alexander in 332 BC. After his death, Egypt came under the rule of one his generals, Ptolemy. Ptolemy established in a new dynasty, whose rulers encouraged scholarships in Alexandria. Hellenistic scientists discovered important principles. A mathematician named Euclid organized earlier knowledge in the logical system. He also worked out of hundreds geometrical proofs, writing a textbook that became the basic work in geometry. Eratosthenes was both a scholar and head of librarian at Alexandria about 230 BC. From earlier Greek scientists, Eratosthenes knew that the earth was round. Using geometry, he estimated its circumference with a remarkable accuracy. Aristarchus was a mathematician and astronomer from the island of Soma. He argued that the sun was the center of the universe, but this idea was too startling for other Greek scientists to accept. Their observations seemed to be proof that the sun revolved around the earth. People continued to believe in an earth-centered universe for another 1,700 years. Archimedes studied at Alexandria but spent most of his life on the island of Sicily. His work in mathematics and physics led him to discover the principles of the lever and the pulley as well as the natural laws for calculating the weight of an object. Philosophers considered new problems. Both Hellenic and Hellenistic philosophers believed they could use reason to discover rules to explain and direct human conduct. There was an important difference, however. In the Hellenic age, philosophers had been concerned particularly with the individual as a citizens of the polis. In the Hellenistic age, the Greek city-states were no longer the center of political life. The Greek world grew larger and more complex as Greeks settled in other lands and exchanged ideas with other people. Philosophers' 6 rules of living. 2 important Hellenistic schools of philosophy developed in Athens about the 3rd century BC. One was Epicureanism, named after Epicurus, tried to define the ways in which people could live untroubled lives. He advised against trying to gain weight, political power, or fame, since such as attempts increase anxiety. They should try to keep their bodies free from pain and their minds released from worry and fear. Stoicism. The other Hellenistic philosophy had most enduring influence. Zeno stated that the essential part of the persons was reason. The individual, said Zeno, should accept what lives bring and remain indifferent to pain, pleasures, and unhappiness.